The dust still swirled from the gunshot when Jack Harlan realized the line he'd crossed. Two roughnecks lay sprawled in the red Arizona dirt outside Tucson, their blood soaking into the parched earth like spilled whiskey. The woman fixed him with wide, bruised eyes, her 7-year-old son clutching at her faded dress. Jack had ridden in looking for smuggled rifles to fence up north, black market Winchesters that could fetch a pretty penny. But now he'd killed again. The outlaws had sneered about clearing stock, unwanted souls headed for the darkest corners of the frontier saloons. When the boy sank his teeth into one man's arm as he yanked his mother toward the wagon, something inside the ex-Confederate scout broke wide open. Maria Jenkins and her boy Tommy were free, but Jack Harlan was a marked man. Hoofbeats thrummed in the distance, maybe a sheriff's crew, or the rest of that snake rattler gang. What would a fella pay for standing tall? And when the badges come knocking, where do you hightail it when the whole territory is closing in? Jack spread hunkered in a valley ringed by saguaro-studded hills, 30 miles from the nearest speck of civilization. No kin, no law, no prying eyes until this mess. Maria hadn't uttered a word on the hard ride back. She sat stiff behind him on the saddle, arms locked around Tommy, her sharp gaze sweeping the horizon like a cornered coyote. At the cabin, she dismounted without taking his hand. "You can bunk in the back," Jack grunted, swinging down, his voice gravelly from too many silent years. "Water's fresh, grub's on the shelf." She sized up his sun-leathered face, hunting for the hook. "There was always a hook out here. What do you want from us?" The words hung heavy in the dry air, thick as powder smoke. Jack yanked the saddle off his horse, moved steady and sure, just like when he dropped those bastards. "Nothing you ain't willin' to offer." But Maria knew better than to swallow a man's promises, especially one who could draw and fire without a blink. That night, she wedged a chair under the door and kept the butcher knife close under her pillow. Tommy tossed in his sleep, mumbling in a mix of English and Spanish from his pa's old ranch days. Through the walls, she heard Jack pacing the front room, the glug of a whiskey jug against tin. She'd spotted the scars when he washed the blood off earlier bullet holes and saber cuts from the war. This hombre had spilled blood before today. By dawn, she'd hatched her plan. They'd bolt, borrow his horse if need be, head for the border towns down California way, vanish into the crowds where her cousin ran a boarding house. But when she cracked the door, Tommy was missing. Terror hit like a stampede. She bolted to the front, bare feet pounding the splintery planks. Through the window, there they were, Jack crouched by the pump, showing Tommy how to prime it right. The kid's small hands gripped the handle. Jack's were careful, steady. "Mom," Tommy yelled, spotting her. "Mr. Jack says I'm tough like Pa was." Maria's throat tightened. Tommy hadn't spoken of his father since the cholera ripped through their camp months back in New Mexico. The sickness had been brutal, unforgiving, but here the boy was, grinning for the first time since the raid. Jack glanced up, locking eyes with her across the yard. Something flickered between them, not faith, not quite, but an understanding. Two souls who'd been stripped bare, fighting to shield what scraps they had left. "She's hungry," he said flat out. "Fixin' breakfast." Inside, the air smelled of strong coffee and sizzling bacon reel chow, more than they'd scraped together in weeks. Jack handled the skillet with a grace that belied his bulk, hands marked by old burns but spotless now. He slid a plate to Tommy without fuss or fanfare. Maria watched him fill 3 mugs with black brew, the kind that sharpened your edge when trouble brewed on the wind. "Those fellas you shot," she murmured while Tommy shoveled food. "Their kind'll come sniffing." Jack stared into his cup. Sunlight caught the silver in his dark hair, etched lines around eyes that had stared down hell. "I know. Why'd I do it? 'Cause some fights are worth picking." His look met hers, and Maria felt a stir deep down, not sparks, not yet, but a nod to shared scars. Choices bite back, but sometimes you bite first. Outside, a buzzard wheeled over the scrub, patient and mean, mirroring the hunters who tracked them sure as sunrise. 3 weeks dragged by before the fever claimed Tommy. It kicked off with a hack, then chills that rattled like loose spurs. By day 2, the kid burned hot as a branding iron dysentery, the frontier's silent reaper, prowling ranches and boomtowns alike. Maria knew it from her days in the mining camps. It had wiped out her whole outfit, including her man. "We need laudanum from town," she hissed, dabbing his brow with a damp rag. Jack loomed in the doorway, hat twisted in his fists. They both knew town meant Dome was wanted now, posters with his name and sketch plastered from here to the Rio Grande. Jack Harlan, killer, reward dead or alive. "I'll ride out at first light. Apothecary's got the stuff. They'll spot you." He jammed the hat on. "He'll fade without it." Maria snagged his arm as he turned. His skin was warm, rough with rope calluses and war marks. She'd seen these hands calm a wild Mustang, patch a busted corral, smooth Tommy's hair during nightmare fits. "Don't," she pleaded. "Please. We'll figure something else." "Ain't no else." Despair clawed at her gut. Over those weeks, she'd warmed to his ways. The axe swings at dawn with faint rebel tunes, wild sunflowers left on the table unasked, the respect he gave her space, never crowding, never grabbing what wasn't offered. Trust had crept in, deadlier than any bullet. Worse, she'd started craving his nearness. "If you go, you might not make it back. Then what for us?" Jack's gaze shadowed. Slowly, he cupped her hand with his, big and scarred but soft as a prayer. "Then you saddle up and head west. Cash stashed in the shed enough to get you settled." "This is settled." The words tumbled out unplanned, but true as gospel. In this rough-hewn shack with his haunted gunslinger, she'd reclaimed safety, quiet, maybe even a future. "Maria," he rasped, unsure. She closed the gap, inhaling saddle leather and campfire on him, spotting the vein pulsing at his neck. They'd circled this tension for weeks, brushed glances, charged air in tight quarters. "Stay," she breathed, tiptoeing to graze his lips with hers. The kiss exploded from panic and hunger, the grim truth that dawn could steal it all. Jack froze a beat, then wrapped her tight, his chest solid and warm. They parted, gasping. "Gotta go," he murmured into her hair. "You know it." She did, same as she knew loving an outlaw in this godforsaken land cost blood. That night, with Tommy's fever easing and the boy's snoring sound, Maria slipped to Jack's room. He sat on the bed's edge, oiling his revolver by lantern glow. "You don't, I do." She shut the door. What followed was raw need and farewell, his touch worshipful on her curves, her fingers tracing his battle map of scars. The tenderness clashed with his killer rep, fueling her fire. At sunrise, she watched him gear upholster, hat, duster to conceal the iron. "If I'm not here by sundown, you will," she cut in, clutching the sheet to hide her tears. "You better." He kissed her softly at the threshold, full of vows they couldn't voice, then vanished into the dawn haze. Tommy called from the back. His fever broke, and he wanted a drink. Life pushed on, even as your soul galloped off with a ghost. Gunfire cracked at dusk, sharp pops rolling like thunder over the flats. Maria's veins iced. She hugged Tommy tight, peeking from the window toward the trail. Dust-boiled upriders barreling hard. Too many. "Ma," Tommy whimpered, scared small. "Hush, darlin'. Quiet now." But it wasn't the law cresting the risey, it was Jack, bent low over his mount, crimson staining his shirt. Trailing him for badge-toters with shotguns, gaining fast. Maria's pulse thundered. He'd snagged the medicine vial glinting in his grip, but the price? The door flew wide. Jack staggered in, ashen and spent. "They tailed me from town. Bossy." He shoved the bottle at her, fingers bloody. "Hide. Take Tommy and hole up. Ain't leaving you, you fool." She grabbed his face, forcing his eyes to hers. "We stick." Outside, hooves pounded nearer, yells of "circle the place." "Harlan, you're done." Jack's jaw clenched. She saw the math of a vet who'd tallied too many losses, pitting their hides against his. The root cellar, she snapped, onto the floorboards. Take the boy. What about you? She twisted off her wedding band. The plain gold her first love gave her ages back. I'll stall him. Before he could argue, she was at the door, tousling her hair, hiking her skirt to flash leg bait to muddle their brains long enough for escape. Her family. When did that word fit them? The lead deputy was green, maybe 25, badge shiny, eyes flinty. Ma'am, Huntin' Jack Harlan. Killer. Might have you hostage. Maria thickened her accent, voice quivering with fake fear. See, senor, he was here, but gone about an hour. Headed north to the mountains, I reckon. Search the joint, boys. Her heart stuttered, but then Tommy Coffeeto weak, sickly hack from below the boards. A deputy froze. Kid's Eileen. Probably the runs. The young sheriff eased. You need meds? We hit the docks. Some thief cleaned him out. My boy, Maria whispered, tears real now. Near gone. That Harlan stole the tonic for him. God knows why. It wasn't the full truth. She couldn't fathom why Jack bet his neck for strangers, but gratitude burned fierce. Likely halfway to California by now, the sheriff grumbled. Spot him, wire the town. They poked around the yard, but skipped the cabin, deep white doubt a scared woman's word. Especially one painted as captive. Once gone, Maria waited a full hour before prying the boards. Jack crawled out first, pale and wobbly. Then Tommy, wan but awake. Why not rat me? Jack croaked. Maria eased him to a chair, slicing his shirt to probe the graziest shallow furrow along his side, ugly but survivable. She'd patched worse, 'cause you laid it all on the line for my boy. For us. That makes you kin. His hand halted hers mid-stitch. Can't linger. They'll circle back. Next time we fight smart. She held his stare firm. Together. His eyes softened, the lone wolf's armor cracking for light affection. Tomorrow, the perils he'd buried. Together, he echoed like an oath. That night, Tommy slept deep in the back, Jack's wound clotting, Maria curled in his hold. For the first time since her husband's grave, home felt real fierce, earned. 6 months on, the wanted sheets had faded, shredded by wind and new outrages. The West chewed up old news fast. Jack still favored that side, scar a lifelong reminder, but his hand stayed kind, teaching Tommy letters from a tattered primer, steady as Maria weeded their patch of corn and beans. They kept low, far from dusty trails and nosy sheriffs. Some nights, with Tommy Abed and the desert breeze whispering through the cactus, Maria'd catch Jack eyeing the dark horizon, old soldier twitch, bracing for ambush. You freedin'? She'd prod. His arms squeeze her close. Not 'bout fleeing no more. She got it. They'd carved out worth defending, worth the scrap. Love wasn't the clean tales in those penny dreadfuls, it was gritty, forged in fire, chosen over easy roads. On her finger gleamed a ring Jack whittled from mesquite root, crude and true, mirroring the man. It warmed in the sun, solid as their silent vow. They were bound now, picked, guarded, unbreakable. In the wild stretch between outlaw shadows and fresh starts, that sufficed. The frontier handed second shots to the bold who grab him. What would you stake for love for kin? Share your take in the comments. Have you ever picked heart over safe? Tell us where you stand on risking it all for family in a world gone mad. We'd love to hear your thoughts and keep the conversation rolling.